When it comes to bushcraft, outdoors work, conservation, etc., folding saws are an incredibly handy tool. They give you ability to cut small to medium-sized wood, and they also pack down in a small safe package with no teeth outside, so you don't have to worry about saw guards and stuff, and they will fit handily in most pockets. It's a really useful tool to have. So today we're going to look at a range of different folding saws that are out there, the advantages and disadvantages of them, my personal thoughts on which ones I do like more than others, and we'll have a bit of a test, and we'll hopefully be able to give you a bit of a clue as to which saw is going to be right for you and right for your needs and for your budget. So we have here 5 folding saws that I've used and abused over the years that I have been involved with bushcraft and outdoors work. Some of these are newer than others, some have been more well used in that time as well, and they all come in at a range of price points, starting from low, under £10, I believe this was around £6, all the way up to mid 40s for saw over here. So in order, we have a garden line folding saw. This is the type of folding saw you can typically pick up in a bargain shop, something like The Range, Aldi, Lidl, maybe some supermarkets like Asda. Essentially it's a super cheap and cheerful folding saw, and that will run you, as I said, about £6 to £10. Then moving up substantially from there, the classic bushcrafter saw. This is the Bahco Laplander. So this is the type of saw that people have been recommending for bushcraft for years, probably decades at this point, and for good reason. So we'll get into that later. So these run about, said, £25. Then this is a relatively new addition to my collection. This is a samurai folding saw. So again, Japanese, so this time we're moving into Japanese made saws. This was recommended to me as alternative to the higher price Silkies for essentially close to half the price. So this will run you about the same as a Bahco, but with proper Japanese construction. Then we move into Silky saws. So this is the basic Silky pocket bore. This is their standard model that you can find in a variety of different teeth configurations and handle colors and so on. This is their kind of bog standard everyday saw. Then we have the Silky Pocket Boy Outback. So this is essentially a regular Silky Pocket Boy, but they've made the blade slightly thicker and slightly stiffer, and there was also at one point a low friction coating on this as well. They also have played around a bit with the handle composite material, so it's a little bit more comfortable to hold in wet conditions. So that, and as I said, that will run you about £41–45 there. So we've got from our under £10 to over £40, our range in between. Now, which saw is the best for your budget? Let's have a look at them in action. So, moving on to a sawing test. Now, this is probably one of the least scientific sawing tests on YouTube, because I'm just going to give it a go at sawing through this piece of wood that I found and just give you my thoughts. I mean, you can probably see have a look at the timestamp and see how long it takes me to get through, but we'll just give it a go. So first up is the garden line saw. Firm click, does click into place. Now this has a curved handle and sticky rubber grip. So let's give it a go. So that was pretty hard work. It felt more like I was breaking through the wood than actually sawing through. But it did the job. We have a piece sawn off. It did require a bit more effort than I'm used to, but it did the job. So moving on up. So a Bahco. Now you say this is also not a fair test. That garden line saw though, there I've used probably what, 15, 20 times total, because I realized it was not the greatest saw. I bought it as a cheap saw when I was starting out, and I wanted an extra saw for forest school sessions, but I soon replaced it with something else. And that was the Bahco Laplander, because if you went on the forums when I first started about 10 odd years ago, if you were talking about folding saws or taking saws for bushcraft, almost 100% of the time people would recommend the Bahco Laplander. And that's still a classic saw because, you know, one big reason is their indestructibility. These are solid saws. These are really difficult to break. If you compare them to some of my well-used silky saws, you'll often see that the tip will have broken off on the saws. And if we compare thickness, the back, the Bahco is a chunkier saw. This means that it's a pretty decent one to hand to adults who haven't used tools very much before, because they're very unlikely to break it. So let's get on with the sawing. Again, relatively hard work, but it is worth noting that this saw is a number of years old, so it is unlikely to be as sharp as something relatively new. But yeah, that felt maybe a slight bit easier than the garden line saw, but it was still hard work. So moving up to Samurai, as I said, this is the newest saw, plus it is also a longer saw. If we compare it again to the Bahco, you can see it's quite a length difference, and that will really help us out. It's still kinda just about pocket size, but the extra length will definitely help us out. That was remarkably less effort. It actually felt like I was sawing rather than just dragging the teeth through the wood. But as I said, this is a shiny new saw, so it's that to say. Okay, going on to our pocket boy. Had this one for about a year now. Been used quite a bit. Advantage of these particular saws, the Silky pocket boy range, is those different teeth configurations. If you watch any of my forest school videos, when we're working with kids, I try and get them a saw with finer teeth because it takes less effort to pull it through the wood, so they can saw more without struggling to get it started the first time. So going in, this is a shorter saw, it should be relatively sharp. So that took more cuts to get through than the longer samurai, which is pretty much expected, but those cuts felt smoother. It was easier to pull it through. It was way less effort than the Bahco and the garden line. Way less effort. Like, I'm not sweating nearly as much. It's quite a warm day. We're at 9:30 and I think we're already about 18 to 20 degrees, which for the UK is extremely warm. Okay, moving on to the Pocket Boy. Now this is one that has probably been used the most out of them. I've had it for about 2 years. Did a whole review on it almost a year ago now. I think maybe more than a year. And it is still going strong. Did break the tip off. That was my error. I got a little bit lazy with my technique, but it stood me in good stead for that time. So let's go cut test. Okay, definitely had to work harder than with the newer saws, but something that I did notice, that stiffer blade, the lack of flex in there really allowed me to kind of push it back through before you pull again, because majority of these saws, with the exception of the Laplander, will actually have a pull cut to the blade, so the teeth are angled backwards. So that means they cut on that pull stroke. But to get it back in, you need to have a bit of a push. So you push and then you pull it through, and it's only going to be cut in one stroke. The stiffer blade makes it easier for that push in before you pull out. So some ways I found the flow a little bit easier, but it was definitely harder work than the Pocket Boy. The regular Pocket Boy. Well, like I said a couple of times, that was probably one of the least scientific ways to do it. If you would like me to do a proper video where I do a scientific cut test on it, get all new blades and start them all at the same point on the same type of wood, and then count the number of pulls or something like that, then do let me know. But what we had there was just my impressions, and that was actually the first time that I'd gone through and I'd tested them against each other and just used one after another. Usually when I'm out and about or running a session, I will have one saw that kind of lives in my pocket for that session. I'll use that saw for that session. I might use a different saw for a different session, but in general it is a one saw for one day. So it's very rare that I get to use all of them in quick succession. So I'm surprised actually by the differences I felt with these. I thought they would be kind of minor, but they were marked. I could feel the difference between the saw blades. So what are my thoughts on all of these saws? First of all, cheapest garden line. If you are just looking for a saw, just to get started, just to go out and start doing some sawing, maybe cut a little bit of firewood, do a little bit of light pruning. I mean, if you've really got no budget at all, it's a saw. It does the job. You might have to use a bit more effort, but at the end of the day, if you have two pieces of wood where once there was one, what's the problem? If you're not looking for particularly clean cuts and you just want to get it done eventually, that's fine. It's something that you can buy in bulk and use a whole lot. But I will say it is not my recommended go-to for groups, and we'll get into that a little bit later. So then we have the Bahco Laplander. Now I've got a relatively soft spot for these, so I've used them used them for such a long time, I actually cut down a really decently sized hazel in the back garden with just the precursor to this particular one. And the non-friction coating, which is now worn off in bits and pieces, really did make it nice. And I got on really well with these for a long time, and I used them for a number of years, and so far I haven't broken a single blade on these. They are a solid piece of kit. They are the kind of thing that you would take if you were going traveling away from civilization. You want something that will do the job no matter what, and that you're very unlikely to break, because that is what you're looking for in a trip or expedition where you're away from being able to repair and replace, is something that is less likely to break. You're looking for durability as a hallmark. But I will say, as soon as I tried a Silky saw, because I was recommended a Silky saw by an ex-tree surgeon friend of mine, and once I bought one and gave it a go, it was a game changer, and I haven't looked back since. So still a recommended, good solid saw. It's not a bad price, and it's a good workhorse, but again, not what I'd recommend for groups unless you're talking adults, people who have a little bit more force to be able to apply to it. Then the newest edition, the samurai saws. These I've really liked for the price point, because remember, they're pretty much the same price as a Bahco, but these cut way better. The difference is night and day. Absolutely brilliant cutting, and I've really enjoyed playing around with these lately. So they are going to go around roughly 2/3 of the price of a Silky, and you get a really decent saw. So this is where I'd recommend people probably start off once they've gotten out of that kind of is bushcraft for me phase, and you're just looking for something cheap, or you're looking for something for a group. These are a really good option. And the reason why I recommend this for using with groups, particularly younger learners, is the amount of effort you use to get it through the wood. Because when you're working with people that are new to the space, that haven't yet built those muscles associated with outdoor work, you want to make the work they do as easy as possible. Okay? It's kind of the opposite of what most people go through with children go through with Duke of Edinburgh. Duke of Edinburgh is all about strapping the biggest backpack with the cheapest kit, which is usually really heavy, and toughing it out and getting through places. But actually, when you get more into hiking and backpacking, what's the first thing you do? You lighten the load. So what we have there is a barrier to entry, because you're making life more difficult for the beginners than it is for people who are more experienced. So with that in mind, I want people to have a good time, and I want them to achieve. Working harder just for the sake of working harder with a saw, I'd rather have people cut 4 pieces of wood to get the exercise and have that achievement of cutting 4 pieces than using the same amount of effort to cut 1 or 2. So I want to have good quality, sharp and effective tools in my toolkit. Said samurai through to Silky, really good. Your budget and your Laplander, while they might be cheap or solid, they don't necessarily work as well for groups, in my opinion. So really nice. I'd say the only thing I don't quite like about these saws is some of those teeth are still kind of attainable even when the saw is fully collapsed into the blade, and that will get caught on things, no doubt. I prefer it that they make it so that the saw can fold all the way into the handle, but minor niggle. They're a good size, still slide into a pocket. You can get sheaths for them. They work just really well. Then moving on to Silky saws. Now, I will say I will admit to favoritism here. I like the Silky saws a whole lot. Ever since I got that first saw, I got a fixed blade sheath saw for use when I was doing forestry work, and it's been absolutely amazing. It just cuts through wood like nothing else. It's like having a little pocket chainsaw. So definitely a fanboy, these Silky saws. The pocket boys, like I said earlier, it's nice to have that option to switch out to have different blades, to get one with a finer tooth or get one with a coarse tooth, and be able to switch. And you can also switch them out and run them in the different handles. They have replacement blades, everything. These are just good quality, good cutting tools. Now, in between these two, as I said, the Outback is stiffer. It has a slightly different composite handle. It has more of a bushcrafty tactical look, which, yeah, whatever. I mean, black isn't the greatest color for finding things either, but they do have the blue, red, pink, whatever colors out there as well. So there are more options for handle colors depending on what blade configuration you have. Now, in between these two, this is obviously about, depending on where you look, about 8 to 10 pounds more expensive for essentially what is the same saw with a few minor additions. So where I would go, and the way that I've gone, is this is my personal saw. I've spent a little bit more because this is the one that gets used the most, because it lives in my backpack, whether I go on a solo bushcraft trip or whether I'm working with a group. This is the saw I use. It's slightly more durable. It works well even in the wet, and I can rely on it. And it just makes me happy looking at it. It's a comfortable handle, nice to look at, good sawing capability. If you're looking to get more saws to build up a kit, I'd probably just go with the regular pocket boys, because these will be the ones that you can get. Like that 8 to 10 pounds difference does add up, and you can get a good set of saws for relatively cheaper. So there we go. I hope that has helped you kind of get an idea of what's out there in terms of pocket saws. No doubt there are a lot of other pocket saws that I haven't even chance to mention, because these are just the ones I've had experience with. The samurai saws are probably the ones that I can't yet vouch for the durability long term, because as I said, I've had these for about 2-3 months now, whereas all of the rest I've had for multiple years, or at least a year. So pocket boy was about a year, but in that year they've received a lot of use. Because I run sessions 3 to 4 days a week, these saws get used frequently. So 1 year of use with me is probably equivalent to 3 years of weekender use. So all of these will do the job of a saw, and which one is right for you depends on your budget, what you're looking to get out of it, who you're working with, and what your goals are. I just hope this has helped you and guided you on that journey. For that, I want to say a big thank you to Wellness Woodlands for again hosting me out here on this beautiful summer's day. The campsite is pretty busy right now, it being in the middle of the summer holidays, but you know what? It still feels really peaceful here, and no doubt you might have heard some children in the background, but honestly, it's still been really quiet and peaceful, so you can still get away. So if you're looking for a Shropshire camping experience, check out Wellness Woodlands in the description below. Thank you so much for watching, and remember to make the most of every day.